Um, I have to admit, I had a bit of a crisis while prepping for this deep dive. I sat down, opened the document to take notes on today's source material, and then,
Let me guess, you immediately got distracted.
well, worse. I had this thought, right? I was like, I should just quickly check the weather. So I opened a new tab. Then I saw a headline about interest rates. Click that.
Oh, yeah, the classic trap.
Right. Then I remembered I needed to buy paper towels. And I kid you not, 10 minutes later, I'm staring at my screen. The original document is totally blank, and I have absolutely zero memory of why I opened the browser in the first place.
It's the tab amnesia phenomenon.
Tab amnesia, that is exactly it. It's like a micro blackout.
It's incredibly common, though. You walk into a digital room and just completely forget your purpose for being there.
It is, but it usually comes with this heavy side serving of guilt for me. Like, I usually sit there thinking, wow, I have the attention span of a goldfish. I'm just lazy.
Or not, you blame yourself.
Exactly. But that is exactly why we are digging into this specific audiobook today. It's called The Only Way to Master Your Focus from the channel Listen and Grow.
It's a great source.
It really is. And reading it, I actually got a little defensive at first because the author makes a pretty bold claim right out of the gate. They argue that this isn't a personal failure. We aren't just losing our focus, it's being stolen.
It's a very provocative opening, for sure. The source explicitly frames this as a war for your attention.
Which sounds so dramatic.
It does sound like hyperbole, right? Because we love to use war metaphors for everything. But when you look at the economics behind the apps and tools we use, it's really not far off.
See, that's where I hesitated. Like, war implies an enemy. Are we really saying that Instagram or my email client is an enemy combatant?
In a literal sense, yes. Think about the business model here. The source breaks this down beautifully. These platforms do not make money when you are productive.
Yeah.
They don't make money when you put your phone down to write a novel or play with your kids or just go for a walk. They only make money when your eyeballs are locked on their screen.
So they have an active incentive to keep you there.
Exactly. So you have thousands of the smartest engineers and behavioral psychologists in the world on the other side of that screen, designing algorithms specifically to fragment your attention.
That's the David versus Goliath aspect I just hadn't fully appreciated. Like, I'm sitting here relying on my sheer willpower, and they are using literal supercomputers to predict exactly what shade of red on a notification dot will make me click.
Precisely. And the casualty in this war isn't just your productivity. I think that's where most standard productivity advice totally misses the mark.
How so?
Well, we worry about not getting the spreadsheet done right.
Yeah.
But the source argues the real cost is emotional. It talks about this state of continuous partial attention,
Continuous partial attention.
where we are never fully on, but we're also never fully off.
Oh man, that line in the book really stuck with me. The one where they said silence feels loud and stillness feels wrong.
Terrifyingly accurate.
It is. I've noticed that if I'm standing in line at the grocery store for 30 seconds, I almost panic if I don't have something to look at. It genuinely feels wrong to just stand there.
And that is the core mission of this deep dive today. We need to understand why stillness feels wrong to you now.
Because it didn't always used to be this way.
Right. And we aren't going to tell you to throw your phone in a lake or go live in a monastery.
Yeah.
That's just not realistic for modern life.
Thank goodness.
The goal here is to understand the biology, the actual mechanics of why your brain is betraying you so you can reverse engineer a solution. So let's talk about that biology.
Let's get into the mechanics, because I think most people listening have a surface level understanding of this. We all know the word dopamine.
The famous pleasure chemical.
Right, we call it the pleasure chemical. I eat a donut, I get dopamine, I feel good. But the book goes into a lot more nuance here that I found super helpful. It's actually not just about pleasure, is it?
No, and this is the biggest misconception that leads people completely astray. If dopamine were just about pleasure, you'd only scroll when you were seeing things you actively liked.
Which is definitely not what happens.
Right. Have you ever found yourself scrolling for an hour, feeling kind of gross, maybe even bored or anxious, but you still just can't stop?
Literally every single night. I call it the zombie scroll. I'm not even enjoying the videos I'm watching. I'm just swiping.
That's because dopamine is not the molecule of liking. It is the molecule of wanting.
Wanting?
Yes, it's about anticipation and seeking. Its evolutionary purpose is to get you off the couch to go forage for food or find water. It drives the search.
So it's the engine, not the reward.
Exactly. And the source explains that modern tech exploits this by decoupling the wanting from the liking. You can want the next swipe desperately without actually liking what you find.
Oh, wow. That perfectly explains the slot machine comparison the author makes. Like, I've always heard that social media is like a slot machine, but I didn't realize how literal that biological comparison was until I read the section on variable rewards.
It's a textbook behavioral psychology concept. It's called a variable ratio schedule.
Break that down for us.
Sure. So if you pulled a lever and got a cookie, every single time you'd eventually get full and stop. It's predictable. Boring even.
Right. My brain knows the outcome.
But if you pull the lever and maybe you get a cookie or maybe you get nothing or maybe you get a massive jackpot, that uncertainty spikes dopamine through the roof.
Because the brain is trying to solve the pattern.
Exactly. It's desperate to find the pattern. So when you check your email, most of it is junk, which is nothing. Some of it is work, which is stress. But maybe, just maybe, there's a great opportunity or a compliment in there. That's the jackpot.
And that maybe keeps the brain in a state of high alert, constantly seeking the next hit.
Which leads us directly to what the book calls the baseline shift.
Oh, man. This was a part that made me realize why I struggle so much to read physical books anymore.
Yes, this is critical. If your brain adapts to a baseline of stimulation where you get a maybe reward every 15 seconds, then a task like reading a dense report or a novel.
Where the reward might come after 2 hours of focus, or maybe not at all.
Right. That literally feels biologically painful.
That's so wild to me. It's not just that I find the book boring, it feels like something is actually wrong.
Because your brain is screaming, where are the hits?
Yeah.
Where is the stimulation? You've essentially built up a tolerance, just like you would with caffeine or any other substance.
So the slow, deep, meaningful work doesn't even register as stimulating enough to hold my attention anymore?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a brain that is addicted to the maybe and a baseline that is set way too high.
And standard advice you hear everywhere for this is usually just be more disciplined, try harder, put your phone away.
Which the author absolutely shreds.
They do! And thank goodness for that, because I was getting tired of failing at it.
Right. Relying on willpower to fight a highly engineered dopamine loop is like bringing a squirt gun to that war we talked about earlier. The source defines willpower as a finite resource.
A finite resource, meaning it runs out.
Yes. There's a concept in psychology called ego depletion. Every single time you resist the urge to check your phone, you burn a unit of mental energy.
So wait, if my phone is just sitting next to me on the desk, even if I'm not looking at it, I'm burning energy just ignoring it.
Yes, because you are actively inhibiting an impulse. If you do that 300 times a day by 4 in the afternoon, your battery is completely dead.
And that's when I binge.
That's when you find yourself 3 years deep into an ex-colleague's Instagram feed.
Okay, so if willpower is a battery that inevitably runs out, what's the alternative? Because we can't just throw up our hands and say, well, willpower doesn't work, so I guess I'll just be forever distracted.
The alternative the book offers is strategic laziness.
Strategic laziness. I like the sound of that.
You stop trying to fight the battle inside your head, and you start fighting it in your physical environment. The quote from the source that summarizes this perfectly is, "You do not rise to the level of your intentions. You fall to the level of your environment."
I highlighted that quote 3 times. It's honestly humbling. We like to think we are these rational captains of our soul, but really we're just reacting to whatever is immediately in front of us.
So the solution is friction. You need to increase the activation energy for the bad habit.
Meaning, make it harder to do.
Right. If you have to stand up, walk to the other room, and open a drawer to check your phone, that takes maybe 20 seconds. But that 20 seconds is usually enough for your prefrontal cortex, the rational part of your brain, to catch up with the dopamine drive and say, wait, we don't actually need to do this.
It's giving yourself a biological cooling off period. But let me play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
A lot of people listening, and me included, we work entirely on our screens. I can put my phone in the garage, sure, but I still have Slack and email and 40 tabs open on the actual monitor I'm using to do my job. I can't hide the computer from myself.
That's very true. And that brings us to the internal digital environment, and specifically the myth of multitasking.
Oh boy.
We often switch tabs because we genuinely feel like we're being hyperproductive. You think I'm answering an email while listening to a meeting while writing a script?
It feels efficient. You feel like a wizard when you're doing it.
You feel busy.
Yeah.
But the source digs into the research on attention residue. This is a term coined by Sophie Leroy. Basically, when you switch from task A to task B, your attention doesn't follow you instantly. A residue of your attention remains stuck on task A.
Is that why if I answer a super stressful email and then try to go back to writing a document, I'm just kind of staring blankly at the cursor?
Yes, exactly. Part of your mental processor is still running the stressful email script in the background. If you switch tasks every 5 minutes, You are essentially chopping your cognitive capacity into tiny, unusable fragments.
Wow.
You're operating with a fraction of your actual intelligence.
That is a legitimately scary thought, operating with a fraction of your intelligence. But if we know this, and I feel like deep down we do know this is happening, why is it so hard to stop? Why do I still compulsively tab switch?
Because of the illusion of competence, multitasking generates a lot of short-term feedback. You sent an email, you closed a tab, you responded to a ping. It feels like forward momentum.
And deep work doesn't.
Right. Deep work, like staring at a complex problem for an hour, often yields zero visible progress until the very end. The brain naturally prefers the immediate feedback loop, even if the net result is much lower quality work.
So we have to become comfortable with the lack of feedback. We have to essentially get comfortable with the silence again. Which leads perfectly into the practical application because the book offers some really specific techniques to rebuild this focus muscle. And I want to talk about urge surfing.
This is hands down one of the most practical tools in the entire book.
I actually tried this yesterday, by the way. I sat down to write, and I committed to just doing 20 minutes. No tabs, no phone. And about 3 minutes in, I felt that twitch. Literally, my thumb physically twitched to hit Command-T for a new tab.
And what did you do?
Well, instead of fighting it or just giving in, I tried to just surf it, like the book says. And I have to tell you, it was intensely physically uncomfortable.
That discomfort is withdrawal. We really shouldn't sugarcoat it. When you deny your brain that expected dopamine hit, it protests loudly. The technique of urge surfing is about observing that physical sensation, the twitch, the tightness in the chest, the restlessness, without acting on it.
It's distinct from fighting it, right? Because fighting it is like saying, no, stop it, don't think about the phone. Surfing is more like, oh, look, I'm feeling really restless right now. That's interesting.
Exactly. You objectify the feeling. You realize that the urge is just a wave. It rises, it crests, and this is the key part, it eventually crashes and fades.
But it feels like it won't.
Right. Most people give in right at the crest. They think the urge will just keep getting stronger and stronger until they explode. But the source says if you can just wait out that 90-second peak, the feeling dissolves on its own.
And that's the rep. That's the bicep curl for your brain.
That is neuroplasticity in action. Every single time you ride that wave without clicking over to a new tab, you are physically rewiring the neural pathway. You are teaching your brain, I can feel boredom and I don't die. I can feel uncertainty and I don't need to check my inbox.
I love the idea that we're actively rewiring the brain. It gives me a lot of hope that I haven't permanently broken my attention span.
You definitely haven't.
But there's another side to this rewiring, and that's recovery. Because the book had a section on burnout that completely flipped my understanding of why I get so tired at the end of the day.
It's very counterintuitive. We usually think burnout comes from doing too much work.
Right, working too many hours.
But the author argues that burnout actually comes from doing too much fragmented work.
The hamster wheel effect.
Right. If you spend 8 hours switch tasking, constantly moving between low-value tasks, you never get the psychological reward of completion. You never actually finish a deep thought.
So your brain is just full of open tabs.
Exactly. That leaves your brain with all these open loops, which is incredibly exhausting. But doing 4 hours of deep focus work where you actually solve a hard problem, that can actually be energizing. It releases healthy dopamine.
It's the difference between running a marathon and running in circles. One gets you somewhere and the other just makes you dizzy and sick.
That's a great way to put it.
But the prescription for rest in the book, I have to be honest, I struggled with this part. The expert says rest is not scrolling, which, fine, I get that. But then they suggest that true rest is essentially nothing.
Passive disengagement.
Right. Walking without a podcast, folding laundry without Netflix on in the background, just existing. My immediate reaction to reading that was, but that's a waste of time. I could be learning something right now.
And that reaction is exactly the problem. We treat our brains like hard drives that constantly need to be filled with data. But your brain is an organ. It needs digestion time.
Digestion time.
Yes. If you are constantly shoving information in, even good information, like an educational podcast or an audiobook, you never give your brain the space to actually consolidate what it learned.
So the silence isn't empty space, it's active processing.
Exactly. It's the default mode network in the brain. It kicks in specifically when you aren't focusing on an external task. That's where creativity happens. That's where you connect the dots between two disparate ideas.
So if I plug my ears with a podcast every single time I walk the dog, I am actively robbing myself of those insights.
You are consuming, but you aren't thinking.
I feel personally attacked. But you're right. I genuinely can't tell you the last time I had a truly original idea while I was actively consuming content. The good ideas always come in the shower, which is conveniently the only place I can't bring my phone.
That's the classic example.
Yeah.
And the goal of this whole methodology is to expand that shower effect to more parts of your daily life.
It really does seem like we're talking about an entire philosophy of life here, rather than just a productivity hack on how to get more emails done.
It absolutely is. The source calls it the focused life. In a modern economy where attention is the absolute scarcest resource, the ability to command your own focus is a superpower. It's a massive competitive advantage.
Right, because no one else can do it.
If everyone else is fragmenting their intelligence on social media, and you can sit in a chair for 4 hours and master a complex new skill, you win.
But it's more than just winning economically, right? It's about agency. That's the part that moved me the most. If I can't control where my attention goes, then I'm not really in control of my own life. I'm just a passenger in an algorithm's car.
That's the profound takeaway. Attention is the currency of your life. What you pay attention to is what your life ultimately becomes. If your attention is scattered, your life feels scattered. If your attention is deep, your life feels deep.
So let's wrap this up with something actionable for everyone listening. We've covered a lot of ground: the dopamine traps, the environment design, the urge surfing. But for someone listening right now who feels like their brain is just fried, where do they start today?
I would highly suggest the Do Nothing Challenge. It's really small but powerful. Find one transition moment in your day where you usually pull out your phone. Maybe it's waiting for the coffee machine to brew, or walking from your car to the office, or just waiting for an elevator.
The prime scrolling times.
Right.
Yeah.
Choose just one of those moments today and commit to keeping the phone in your pocket. Just stand there, look at the wall, look at the sky, feel that powerful urge to check, and just write it out. Surf the wave.
It sounds deceptively simple, but I know from my own recent experience that the first few times are going to feel genuinely excruciating.
They will.
But that discomfort is literally the feeling of you taking your power back.
I love that. Focus is freedom. That's the mantra.
Yeah.
Listen, this has been a massive wake-up call for me. I'm going to try to walk my dog without headphones tonight. If I don't survive the silence, you can tell my story.
We'll survive. You might even enjoy it once the twitching stops.
We'll see about that. But before we sign off, I want to leave everyone with one final thought to mull over. Something that really struck me as we were talking through all of this. We mentioned that attention is the currency of your life.
Right.
But if you take that a step further, your attention literally dictates what you remember. So if your attention is constantly hijacked by these platforms, you aren't just losing time. You're letting a corporation author your memories.
Wow.
Every time you zombie scroll instead of being present, you're basically outsourcing your own autobiography to an algorithm. And that is a terrifying reason to finally take your focus back.
That is incredibly powerful.
Thanks for diving deep with us, everyone. Go reclaim your attention. We'll see you next time.